everybody. This is Rob Keens of goldsilverpros.com. I have a very special returning guest of the program, Max Porterfield of Callinex Mines. Max, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Well, glad to have you on the program, and we wanted to get an update on Callinex Mines. This is one of the favorite stocks that our viewers like that has been on our program, and so we wanted to get an update from you on what's been going on with you guys the last few months and what news you have for us.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me again and the continued support with what we're up to. In terms of what we've been up to and consistently drilling out our discoveries. So last time we were here, I think we talked probably about the Rainbow discovery, which is exceptionally high-grade copper discovery. Just outside of a town called Flin Flon, Manitoba, where the local mines due to shut down next year. It's a very, very key driver for that community. And we hit this Rainbow discovery last year. We've been drilling it consistently in part of a broader 30,000 meter drilling campaign that we commenced in February of this year that was with our concurrent financing. And we've announced results for about half of that. And in those results, we've seen some really exceptional high-grade copper results. You know, some of the intercepts are almost 5 meters of 15% copper. We've also done some wider intervals of, 60 meters of over 2.5% copper. And to kind of give you those grades in context, the average grade of mined copper on the world is 0.5%. And obviously the average has been brought down heavily by big energy-intensive copper production in Latin America from these large, low-grade open pitable mines. And to be in the top 10 highest-grade copper mines in the world, you need to average 3.75% copper or higher. So the grades that we've intersected at Rainbow to date have been really, really great to see. And so we're in the focus is building tonnage at Rainbow, and as we do that through drilling, and then it'll be constant news flow, and then also potentially test targets and look to test targets that we've generated along strike as well, to build upon, maybe another Rainbow, so to speak. So that's what we're up to in Manitoba. And we're also, have an active drilling campaign in New Brunswick to follow up on our 2 near surface silver discoveries that's ongoing. That's a 4,000 meter campaign where we're going to be following up on 2 near surface silver discoveries that we made last year that were very, very widely spaced. They were 6.8 kilometers apart.
Yeah, one thing we like to talk about on our show is the value of these polymetallic deposits, the VMS, volcanogenic massive sulfides. Talk about your deposit and why it's important that we look at these. Not only we're looking at base metals, but also the precious metals.
Yeah, so VMS deposits are in nature polymetallic, as you mentioned. So they have the best of both worlds, I like to say, with base metals and precious metals. So you're going to have copper, zinc, lead on the base metal side of things, and then gold and silver for the precious metals in these type of deposit styles. Rainbow, for example, is exceptionally high-grade copper, but it also does carry gold as a byproduct, as well as zinc and some silver. So again, it'll be dominant in one metal or another. If you look at our Nash Creek deposit in New Brunswick, which we put out a PEA on our New Brunswick properties in 2018, that's a 19.1 million ton resource, and it's about probably roughly 70% zinc, the rest lead. And so having those polymetallic natures is really good for, inherent diversification in metals, because, the commodity prices obviously can fluctuate from time to time, and then it obviously generates additional revenue streams.
I think we're in a commodity boom. I think the next big commodity cycle is here because we're starting to see the rises in the overall commodity indexes, the S&P and the Dow indexes. I think copper's trading at a 10-year high, and zinc is somewhere near its all-time high. How important is that to you guys in your exploration efforts? Do you really pay attention to the base metals in terms of setting your targets and how you're developing your properties?
Well, I mean, commodity prices are something that everybody keeps an eye on in the industry. As an exploration company, obviously we're looking at further out and into the future as well, because there's a long lead time in many cases. So the instant shorter term fluctuations in commodity prices really don't impact the longer term decision making of an organization like ourselves. But with that being said, when you do have a higher commodity price environment, that's going to be a big boom for the industry, because that's going to drive exploration. And that's one of the big shifts that's taking place, particularly in mentioned the copper markets. From a discovery to production in copper, it's an average is about 7 years. And you're having this big shift in the demand side for copper, with really the electrification of everything, with EVs, toothbrushes, you name it, it's got a battery in it. and that's going to be heavily reliant on copper in tandem with government policy around the world for global infrastructure build out. I mean, it's a big topic in the United States. Obviously, the Chinese initiative for the One Belt, One Road initiative, which is the largest infrastructure plan in the history of mankind. Mm-hmm. That's all going to be a big driver for base metals at a time where you've had a lack of investment for the most part into exploration for base metals due to lower metal price environment. So yes, you've got a shorter term move. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to have obviously immediate impact to cash flows for the producers. And from an economic standpoint, exploration, we'll trade at a premium given the much better market that we're in for metals.
Yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions for that. The first has to do with China, since you mentioned it. China just announced, I believe yesterday, that they're expanding out their derivatives and futures market in the commodity sector. So I believe that they're going to become a national hub, much like London and the COMEX are here in the US. Explain, the profile for what the Chinese are doing. You mentioned the Belt and Road Initiative is connecting 73% of the world's economies. How is that going to affect all of the base metals that you guys will be mining in the next few years?
Well, it's infrastructure build out. If you look at, the base metal space really in the mid 1950s when they had US infrastructure as a big demand driver for commodities during that time, because it takes a lot of materials to build these bridges, roads, telecommunication system. All this stuff has a finite life. I mean, if you look at galvanization of the steel, for example, I mean, you're looking at 80 years on average, I think. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these bridges in the United States, for example, that are quite dilapidated. And there's a concept called the Kuznets cycle, which is kind of a mindset or evidence is that when you have government policy that creates infrastructure spending, that policy will in turn long-term job creation. There's usually a 20-year impact of job creation. And so the Chinese are very systematically going back to the early 1990s have used those type of policies to grow their middle class and create jobs as they've kind of had this shift to the global economy and joining that. And so you've seen that if you've had an opportunity to travel to China, the airports are, next to the best in the world. And quite frankly, they're immaculate. The size of their roadway systems are huge. The telecommunication lines, and they focused on doing that really in the urban areas and then moving out towards the rural areas of the country. And now with the One Belt, One Road initiative, that's going to be an infrastructure plan where they're looking to essentially recreate the Silk Road in many ways through ports and different connection routes to better connect China to Europe as well as Africa. And, when you have that, again, it's going to be job creation, not just for China, but for a lot of the world. And that's going to be a big, big demand driver for metals and commodities for obviously their inherent needs.
Yeah, and you mentioned copper, and I think also silver ties into that infrastructure build, especially with the technical economy. Everything technical requires silver. You guys have something out at Nash Creek. I believe you're following up on some silver discoveries out there. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, we mentioned that a bit briefly, but in Nash Creek, as we had talked about, we've got a sizable zinc lead resource at Nash Creek. And so with that being said, we've done regional exploration, identified some drill targets, and then we intersected near surface silver last year. And that was two widely spaced holes. We were 6.8 kilometers apart on a main controlling fault that's controlling that mineralization and had never been historically, to our knowledge, drill tested. And that's when we intersected that near surface silver, a silver dominant mineralization, as opposed to Nash Creek, which does have a really minimal amount of silver. It's truly, as I mentioned, a zinc lead deposit. So to hit the silver near surface is unique. To hit it in the context that it's in very close proximity to an asset that showed positive economics through a previous preliminary economic assessment that we published in 2018. We're doing a 4,000 meter campaign to follow up on that to see how minimalized that trend is around those two discovery holes.
So what's your outlook for the silver market? I ask people this because we're bullish on it. We're gold, silver pros, but we look at long-term cycles, 75, 80-year cycles. It appears as though for the first time this year, according to Bloomberg, we're going to have a shortage in the amount of silver mined versus the amount demanded for the first time in a long time, especially in the impacting the US, because we used to have strategic stockpiles. We no longer have silver. So we think silver is going to be bullish medium to long term. What's your view on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think silver is going to outperform gold
Mm.
Silver typically outperforms gold in an up market. We've seen that. I mean, if you look at the gold move that we had coming out of this, I don't know what you want to call it, early last year, the pandemic lows, so to speak, when the market was obviously very quite jittery and nervous about what the impact of the COVID-19 situation could be. You had silver have a huge run. I mean, that was a very nice run that it had. It's obviously pulled back and stabilized here, but I do think it's going to have a continuous run moving forward. And it's twofold with silver. It's different because silver's got a big industrial demand use, as you mentioned, and from a healthcare industry, technology industry, there's going to be other demand drivers on silver than you have in gold. And again, a lot of the silver's production globally is from a byproduct. So you always have to keep an eye on that. And with that being said, you can have big moves in silver. We've seen it in the past. And so I do favor silver as more of a leverage play to like a precious metals exposure, personally.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do think silver probably long term could be a lot more explosive than gold. Gold typically leads silver on the way up, but silver tends to overshoot gold in terms of returns. One of the things I was on we were on a conference call with Jerry Huang of Impact Silver and Gemini Capital, which is his finance company. And I did a presentation on gold and silver, and we were talking about essentially the mining stocks. The mining stocks are lagging gold and silver right now. So we see the outlook for mining stocks as being very positive, because typically last time this happened was around that 2009, 2011 timeframe when we eventually got to all-time high price in gold. So we think that the mining stocks are going to catch up and supersede, what the precious metals are doing. Is that your view on that? Where do you see the mining stocks as compared to the gold and the silver markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think there certainly has been a lag. You'll see it in the base metal names. I mean, if you look truly at Callinex's share price today, I think we're trading around 325 Canadian. Mm-hmm. That's where we were trading before we ever hit Rainbow. And Rainbow is an exceptionally high grade copper discovery outside of Flin Flon. So we've continued to have excellent results out of Rainbow, and the stock's traded, and we've had some pretty good moves within it. Mm-hmm. By and large, where we are is where we were before we actually made the discovery. So in a lot of ways, you can buy the stock at the same valuation when the asset itself's been dramatically de-risked, and we've shown value there. So in our case, I did certainly see that, and I do see that across the board. So I definitely do agree in terms of what's driving that. I mean, I think it's just money flows. And when you have money flows come back into the commodity sector, which, there's ebbs and flows in markets in general, I think all the ships will rise, and the ones that have done a lot of work will rise more than others.
One of the reasons we like you and some of our credit investors really like you is your share structure. So I'm actually going to put that up on the screen out of your deck that's on your website. You guys have a wonderful share structure. And what that does is it creates incredible value for shareholders. How do you do that as an exploration company? How have you guys not just diluted like crazy like a lot of these other miners do?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did do is we did do a share consolidation in 2019. Mm-hmm. So we did do that. The company Callinex was formed in 2011, and it wasn't like the share price was out of sync or there was too many shares out in the structure itself. The reality is that Callinex published a maiden PEA on the Nash Creek assets in 2018, just about weeks before the trade war between U.S. and China. And we were that was predated the Rainbow discovery, the high grade copper, and obviously the discovery of the silver. And when zinc prices collapsed, so too did Callinex share price. I mean, we went to a very, very low market capitalization. And so one of the things that we did is we restructured the company in terms of doing a rollback. And we made a very, very small financing at that time of $1 million. And then we went out and we made those discoveries with that, consolidated structure intact. And so that's led us to be able to do a much lower dilution. And I think leads us to be a healthier company in an upcycle in general.
So let's talk a little bit about the deposits that you have in the areas that you're exploring. I'm going to throw this up on screen too. This is a reminder because we've covered this in detail, but you guys have 3 here in Canada. Talk about each one and how each one is unique as a part of your portfolio.
Yeah, so the portfolio is going to be highlighted by the Flin Flon Mining District, Area 1 there in northern Manitoba. That's one of the top BMS districts globally in the world for metal produced and grades as well. In terms of what we've done there, we've got a project called Pine Bay that's always been indicative of hosting a large deposit, had the geologic pedigree in the area. It's got a hydroelectric power line that literally runs over the property, but we just hadn't been able to figure it out. And there's that, kind of community involvement issue as well, because there's a town of 5,500 people. And the mine there, the flagship mine 777, that's operated by HUD Base, shuts down next May. And so that's, again, going to be going from about 785 jobs to 50 jobs by 2023. So a real focus has been to make a discovery there. And we've made that discovery last August. It's called the Rainbow Discovery. As I mentioned, it's exceptionally high grade copper. It's within 200 meters of a hydroelectric power line. So as the world shifts away from the hydrocarbons, you're going to look for how's your metals produced? Or what are they sourced from? And so that's clean, low cost power with the opportunity leverage up existing infrastructure, because they've been mining in Flin Flon for 100 years. And so that's what we're up to there. And that's where, bulk of the the CapEx is going for the 30,000 meters of drilling that's ongoing right now. And then in New Brunswick, and number 2 on the map is the Bathurst district, which is another really world-renowned VMS-based metals district. That's a camp that's hosted the Brunswick number 12 mine, which at one point was the largest underground zinc mine in the world. That's where we have the Nash Creek deposit, which is a 19.1 million ton resource, and really the center point for our 2018 PEA that we published on those assets. And then on regional exploration, we've made those 2 near surface silver discoveries that we're expanding upon it. And again, that's located 25 kilometers away from a deep water port, a power station, a rail line, gives you direct access to markets, and a lead smelter that's due to shut down, but potentially that can change. And again, that's another situation where you've got a very high unemployment rate. You've got the local employers shutting down, and there's an economic drivers for job creation that are needed in that province. And then to wrap things up in Newfoundland, number 3 on the map there, that's where we have Point Leamington and a significant land package. Point Leamington is a historic resource of over 14 million tons. It's truly a gold, copper, zinc resource that we're working right now on doing some historic assaying of the core to be brought up to modern day standards and be able to publish a modern 43101 compliant resource. In addition, we've staked regional exploration targets that our teams identified that we'll be looking to drill test at some point in the future. But we've got a big head start with a sizable resource and deposit at Point Leamington with some great targets in Newfoundland.
Awesome, good to hear. So last couple of minutes on the program, one last question. What should investors pay attention to for the rest of the year? What's on tap for you guys? What's the big news going forward?
So it's going to be drill results out of Manitoba at the Rainbow drilling that we're doing there, as well as testing some targets at Pine Bay, which is adjacent where Rainbow's hosted. We've announced about half the drill results so far for a broader 30,000 meter drilling campaign that's ongoing today. We're also going to have drill results to follow up on the silver, that 4,000 meter campaign. We're on the tail end of drilling that, and so that's going to be steady news flow with those results. We were testing 14 target areas, so those will be the results that'll be announced. And then, as I mentioned at the last end there about our Point Leamington deposit, we're looking to do an updated resource and get that wrapped up and announced in the short order, which I think would be a pretty key catalyst because, again, it's an asset that's, called a bit of a sleeper in the portfolio at this time, but some real value there.
Max, thank you so much for rejoining the program. Love to hear from you again. We'll continue to cover you guys and bring updates to our viewers as you guys release them. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for having me.